The stars looked different now. Commander Hanel pressed his face against the cold window of his ship and stared into the darkness. 50 years had passed since the humans disappeared, and their empty space still felt wrong somehow, like a house after everyone had moved out, leaving only shadows behind. "Sir, we're getting close to the Terra Nova system," his pilot Jisoo called from the front of the bridge. Her voice was steady, but Hanul could hear the nervous edge underneath. Nobody liked flying through human space. Too many stories, too many strange things that happened to ships that stayed too long. Hanul walked back to his command chair. His crew was good, all of them from different worlds, but they worked well together. The Altarian Defense Corps had been patrolling this dead zone for 20 years now, making sure nothing dangerous came out of it. So far, they had found only empty planets and broken ships floating in the dark. "Take us into the system, but keep the engines ready," Hanul ordered. "I want to be able to leave fast if we need to." The ship moved forward through space. Terra Nova had been one of the biggest human colonies before they all vanished. 5 million people had lived there once. Now it was just another dead rock spinning around its star. "Commander," Minji called from her science station. She was young, only 3 years out of the academy, but she was smart. "I'm picking up something strange from the planet." Hanel felt his stomach tighten. Strange things in human space usually meant trouble. What kind of strange? Energy readings. Very faint, but they're there. Coming from the northern continent. Minji's fingers danced over her controls, trying to get a clearer picture. "Sir, this doesn't make sense." There shouldn't be any power sources left on that planet. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what the report said. When the humans left, they took everything with them. No power, no machines, nothing that could make energy readings. Could it be natural? Hanul asked. Maybe some kind of mineral that gives off energy? No, sir, this is artificial. Definitely made by someone. Minji looked up from her station, her face pale. "Commander, I think someone is still down there." Hanul felt a chill run down his back. The idea of anything still alive on a human world was terrifying. The humans had left for a reason, and most people believed that reason was something so dangerous that even humans couldn't fight it. "We should report this to headquarters," his second officer Chang Ho said quietly. "Let them send a bigger ship to investigate." Hanul thought about it. The smart thing would be to call for backup and wait. But by the time a bigger ship arrived, whatever was making those energy readings might be gone. And after 20 years of finding nothing but empty space, this could be important. "No," he said finally. "We go down and take a look. But we do it carefully." "Sir, that's against regulations," Chang Ho protested. "We're not supposed to land on human worlds without a full science team." "The regulations were made when we thought human worlds were completely dead," Hanul replied. "This changes things. Jisoo, take us down to the planet. Find a landing spot near those energy readings." The ship descended through Terra Nova's atmosphere. The planet looked exactly like the reports described. Empty cities, overgrown farms, and roads with no traffic. But something felt different this time. The air itself seemed to be waiting for something. They landed in what had once been a park in the middle of a human city. The buildings around them were tall and dark, with vines growing up their sides. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't been so empty. "Energy readings are stronger now," Minji reported. "About 2 kilometers north of here, underground." Hanul picked his away team carefully. Minji would come for her science skills, and Junho would provide security. 3 people, enough to investigate, but not so many that they couldn't run if they needed to. They walked through the empty streets of the human city. Their footsteps echoed off the buildings, the only sound in the dead world. Junho kept his weapon ready, though none of them really knew what they might need to fight. "The readings are coming from under that building," Minji said, pointing to a large structure that looked like it had been an office building. "There's definitely something down there." They found an entrance to underground tunnels behind the building. The door was hidden and looked like it had been built to keep things secret. Junho's security tools opened it easily. The tunnels were dark, but their lights showed smooth walls and clean air recycling systems. Someone had built this place to last a long time. "The energy source is just ahead," Minji whispered. Her scanner was beeping faster now. They turned a corner and found a room full of machines. Most of them were dark, but some still had lights blinking on them. In the center of the room was a large cylinder made of clear metal. "Is that what I think it is?" Junho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hanul stepped closer to the cylinder. Inside, surrounded by cold mist, was a human. A real human frozen in some kind of sleep. The machines around the cylinder were keeping him alive. "It's a cryogenic pod," Minji said, scanning the machine. "These readings show the person inside is still alive. He's been sleeping here for decades." Hanil stared at the sleeping human. This changed everything. All the theories about why humans had disappeared, all the fears about what had driven them away. None of it mattered now. Here was a human who had stayed behind. "Can we wake him up?" Hanil asked. "I think so. The pod has an emergency revival system. But sir, are we sure we want to do this? We don't know why he stayed behind. Maybe there was a good reason for him to sleep through whatever happened here." Hanul looked at the human in the pod. He was young, maybe 30 years old in human terms. He looked peaceful, like he was just having a normal sleep. But there had to be a reason he was here alone on a dead world. "Wake him up," Hanul decided. "We need to know what happened here." Minji activated the revival system. The machines around the pod hummed louder, and the mist inside began to clear. Slowly, the human's eyes opened. He looked confused at first, then afraid when he saw 3 aliens staring down at him. The pod opened with a soft hiss. The human sat up slowly, coughing and shaking. He looked around the room like he was trying to remember where he was. "Where?" he said in a weak voice. "How long was I asleep?" "You've been sleeping for 50 years, Hanul said gently in the human language. "I'm Commander Hanul of the Altarian Defense Corps. What's your name?" The human's eyes went wide. 50 years? No, that's impossible. I was only supposed to sleep for 6 months. He looked at them with growing fear. "You have to leave. You have to leave this sector right now." "Why?" Hanul asked. "What's wrong?" The human tried to stand but fell back against the pod. "My name is Kyung-Ho Park. I'm a xenobiologist, and I'm here to warn anyone who found me." His voice was getting stronger, but the fear in his eyes was growing. The humans didn't disappear. They're still here fighting a war you can't see. "And the things they're fighting," he grabbed Hanul's arm. "They're still here too. They're waiting." Dr. Kyung-Ho Park sat in the medical bay of Hanul's ship, wrapped in a warm blanket and drinking hot soup. His hands still shook a little, but his eyes were clear and focused. He had been talking for 3 hours, and his story grew more frightening with each word. "You have to understand," Kyung-Ho said, looking at each of the officers around him. "Humans didn't run away. We couldn't run away. The Devourers don't just kill you, they erase you completely. It's like you never existed at all." Commander Hanul listened carefully, but part of him wondered if 50 years of sleeping had damaged the human's mind. The story Kyung-Ho told sounded impossible. "You're saying humans turned themselves into—" "What exactly?" "Energy beings. Consciousness without bodies. It was the only way to fight the Devourers on their level." Kyung-Ho set down his soup bowl and rubbed his tired eyes. "I was part of the research team that figured out how to do it. We tested it on volunteers first. When it worked, the whole human race had to make a choice. And they chose to stop being human," Minji said quietly. "They chose to save everyone else," Kyung-Ho corrected. "The Devourers were coming for the whole galaxy. Every living thing, every civilization. Humans were just the first target because we were the most aggressive species. But after they finished with us, they would have moved on to your people, and everyone else." The communication system buzzed. "Commander," came the voice of Communications Officer Jinwoo from the bridge. "We're getting a priority message from Fleet Headquarters. They want to speak to you immediately." Hanul looked at Kyung-Ho. "They probably want to know why we landed on a human world without permission." He stood up. "Stay here and rest. We'll continue this conversation later." On the bridge, Fleet Admiral Do-hyun's face filled the main screen. He looked angry and worried at the same time. "Commander Hanul, explain to me why you landed on Terra Nova without authorization." "Sir, we found a human survivor. He's been in cryogenic sleep for 50 years. His story is unusual." "A human survivor?" Admiral Do-hyun's expression changed from anger to surprise. "That's impossible. The humans all disappeared at the same time. There are no survivors." "Sir, with respect, there's at least one, and what he's telling us changes everything we thought we knew about the human disappearance." Admiral Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. "Send me a full report, and bring this human to Fleet Headquarters immediately. The Council needs to hear what he has to say." 3 days later, Kyung-Ho stood before the Galactic Council on the space station orbiting Altara Prime. Representatives from 20 different species sat around a large table, all staring at the only living human any of them had ever seen. Council President Yoonji, an elegant woman from the Vega system, spoke first. Dr. Park, we've read Commander Hanil's report of your claims. They're quite extraordinary. You're saying that humanity still exists, but in a form we cannot see or detect? That's correct, Kyung-ho said. His voice was steady now, stronger after 3 days of rest and food. Humans discovered that the Devourers exist in multiple dimensions at once. To fight them, humans had to exist in those same dimensions. But once you make that change, you can never come back to a physical body. And these Devourers, you claim they're still a threat to the galaxy? Asked Representative Wanho from the mining worlds. They've been contained for 50 years by human sacrifice. But the containment is breaking down. That's why I was put in cryogenic sleep to warn whoever found me when the Devourers started to break free. Admiral Do-hyun, representing the military, looked skeptical. Dr. Park, I mean no disrespect, but this sounds like the fantasy of a traumatized mind. 50 years of sleep could have affected your memory. I understand your doubt, Kyung-ho said calmly. I would doubt it too if I were you. But I can prove what I'm saying is true. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. It looked like a simple crystal, but it glowed with a soft blue light. This is a dimensional scanner. It can detect energy patterns that exist between normal space and other dimensions. If you'll allow me to use it, I can show you the proof. President Yoonji nodded. Proceed. Kyung-ho activated the device. Immediately, the air around them began to shimmer. The council members gasped as shapes appeared in the air. Translucent forms that looked almost like ships, but constantly changing and shifting. Those are human vessels, Kyung-ho explained. They're fighting a battle right here, right now, in dimensions we can barely perceive. They've been fighting for 50 years without rest, without sleep, without any hope of returning home. The shapes in the air moved in complex patterns, some appearing to fire weapons at targets that couldn't be seen. Sometimes the shapes would flicker and disappear, then reappear somewhere else. My God, whispered Representative Suman from the science colonies. How many of them are there? All of them, Kyung-ho said simply. Every human who lived when the Devourers first appeared. 8 billion souls turned into living weapons to protect the galaxy. Admiral Do-hyun stood up slowly, his face pale. Even if this is true, why are you telling us now? What's changed? The Devourers are adapting, learning. They're finding ways to break through the dimensional barriers that humans have been using to contain them. The war is almost over and humans are losing. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as officers ran to their stations. Admiral, called a voice over the communication system. We're getting reports from the outer rim. 3 star systems have gone completely dark. No communication, no sensor readings, nothing. Kyung-ho's face went white. It's starting. They're breaking through. Admiral Do-hyun activated his personal communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Do-hyun. Implement Defense Protocol 7 immediately. All ships are to report to their assigned positions. Defense Protocol 7 won't work, Kyung-ho said quietly. Nothing will work. The Devourers don't just destroy matter and energy. They destroy the idea that something existed. Your weapons can't hurt something that exists in the spaces between thoughts. President Yoonji looked around the council chamber at the frightened faces of representatives from across the galaxy. Then what do you suggest we do? Run, Kyung-ho said. Evacuate everyone you can to other galaxies. Get as far away from here as possible, and hope that the humans can hold the Devourers back long enough for you to escape. And if they can't? Asked Representative Nari from the farming worlds. Kyung-ho looked at her with sad eyes. Then nothing survives. Not you. Not me. Not even the memory that we ever existed. The council chamber fell silent except for the sound of distant alarms. Outside the windows, ships were already beginning to move, preparing for a war against an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't fight. But in the dimensions between dimensions, the human war continued. 8 billion consciousnesses fought on, knowing that every moment they held the line was another moment for the rest of the galaxy to prepare, to run or to find some other solution to an impossible problem. The awakening had begun, but it wasn't humanity waking up. It was the galaxy finally understanding what humans had been protecting them from for 50 long years. The first Devourer ship appeared 3 days after the council meeting. It materialized near the outer colony of Kepler Station like a nightmare becoming real. The ship, if it could be called a ship, looked wrong in every way possible. It shifted and changed shape constantly, as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Captain Jae-hyun commanded the defense fleet that responded to the emergency. His flagship, the Eternal Dawn, led 12 other ships toward the unknown vessel. They had weapons ready and shields up, but nobody really knew what they were flying into. All ships maintain formation. Jae-hyun broadcast to his fleet. We don't know what this thing can do, so stay alert. The Devourer ship noticed them coming. It turned toward the fleet, though it had no visible engines or thrusters. As it moved, space around it began to look strange, like reality was bending and twisting. Captain, I'm getting impossible readings, reported Science Officer Hyerin from her station on the bridge. That ship is somehow existing in several different dimensions at the same time. Can our weapons hurt it? Jae-hyun asked. I don't know, sir. I've never seen anything like this. Jae-hyun made the decision to attack. All ships open fire. 12 ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, plasma missiles, quantum torpedoes. The weapons struck the Devourer ship and simply disappeared, not reflected or absorbed. They vanished as if they had never existed at all. The Devourer ship responded by reaching out with something that wasn't quite a weapon and wasn't quite a tentacle. It touched the cruiser Bright Star, and the ship began to fade away. Not explode or break apart, it just became less real until it wasn't there anymore. Bright Star, respond, Jae-hyun called into his communicator. But there was no response because there was no ship to respond. 300 crew members had just stopped existing. All ships retreat, Jae-hyun ordered. Fall back to minimum safe distance. The fleet pulled back, but the Devourer ship followed them. As it moved, it touched 2 more ships. They faded away just like the first one. 1,000 more people simply stopped being. Then something impossible happened. Ghost ships began appearing around the Devourer vessel, translucent forms that flickered in and out of view. They moved with purpose, firing weapons that seemed to be made of pure light. Captain, Hyerin called excitedly. Those are human ships. The ghost vessels are engaging the Devourer. Jae-hyun watched in amazement as the human consciousness ships fought the Devourer. Their weapons actually worked, tearing holes in the alien vessel's strange hull. But for every hit they scored, 2 human ships flickered and disappeared. The battle lasted only minutes. When it was over, the Devourer ship retreated back into whatever dimension it had come from. But 6 human ships had been destroyed forever. 6 more pieces of humanity lost in their endless war. Sir, Communications Officer Jin-woo reported from his station. I'm picking up a message. Very faint, but it's in human language. Put it through, Jae-hyun ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was strange, like someone talking through water or from very far away. Allied ships, this is what remains of Admiral Lisa Chen. We've contained this Devourer for now, but more are coming. You cannot fight them with physical weapons. You must evacuate this sector immediately. Admiral Chen, Jae-hyun broadcast back. This is Captain Jae-hyun of the Eternal Dawn. Can you tell us how to help? How do we fight these things? The voice was quiet for a long moment. You don't fight them, Captain. You run. Get everyone away from here. We'll hold them as long as we can. Over the next week, 12 more Devourer ships appeared across the galaxy. Each time they were met by human consciousness vessels in battles that most people couldn't even see. Each battle cost humanity more of their limited numbers. Dr. Kyung-ho worked frantically with the galaxy's best scientists to understand the threat. In the research lab on Altara Prime, he explained what he knew to anyone who would listen. The Devourers feed on existence itself, he told the assembled scientists. They don't just destroy matter. They unmake the very idea that something ever existed. When they're done with something, it's like it never was. But the human ships can hurt them, said Dr. Nari, the galaxy's leading expert on quantum physics. How is that possible? Because humans exist in the same dimensional space as the Devourers now. They gave up their physical forms to become living weapons that could actually touch these things. Kyung-ho looked tired and old, even though he was still young. But there are only so many human consciousnesses, and the Devourers just keep coming. How many Devourers are there? Asked Engineer Suman. We don't know. Maybe thousands. Maybe millions. They're from outside our reality entirely. The only thing we know for sure is that there are more of them than there are of us. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the evacuation had begun. Entire worlds packed up their populations and fled toward other galaxies. The ships moved in long lines through space, carrying billions of refugees away from their homes. Pilot Hyerin led one of the evacuation fleets from the Rim worlds. Her convoy of 200 ships carried families from 12 different species, all heading for the safety of the Andromeda Galaxy. How are the refugees holding up? She asked her second officer during one of their regular checks. As well as can be expected. The children don't really understand what's happening. The adults are terrified but trying to stay calm for the children's sake. Kieran looked out at the stars ahead of them. Any word from the home fleet? The last message said they're still fighting. 17 more star systems have gone dark, but the human ships are slowing down the Devourer advance. Behind them, in the galaxy they were leaving, the war continued. Human consciousness ships appeared wherever Devourers attacked, fighting battles in dimensions that twisted space and time. Sometimes they won, driving the Devourers back. Sometimes they lost and another piece of humanity vanished forever, but they never stopped fighting. 8 billion human souls had made their choice 50 years ago, and they would keep that choice until the very last one of them was gone. In the command center on Altara Prime, Admiral Doyun watched the tactical display showing Devourer movements across the galaxy. Red marks showed where star systems had been consumed. Blue marks showed where human forces were fighting. The blue marks were getting fewer while the red marks multiplied. How long can they hold? He asked Kyung-ho. I don't know, the human replied honestly. They've been fighting for 50 years already. They're tired in ways that living beings can't understand, but they'll keep fighting until there's nothing left of them to fight with. And then the Devourers will have won. They'll consume this entire galaxy, and then they'll move on to the next one. And the one after that, they won't stop until they've eaten all of existence. Admiral Do-hyun looked at the display again. The evacuation ships were making good progress, but millions of people were still trapped in systems that couldn't be reached in time. There has to be another way, he said. Kyung-ho was quiet for a long moment. Maybe there is, but it would require a sacrifice even greater than what humanity has already made. What do you mean? I mean ending everything. All of it, the entire galaxy. If we can't save it, maybe we can make sure the Devourers can't have it either. The two of them stared at the tactical display, watching the lights that represented billions of lives, slowly being consumed by an enemy that shouldn't exist. Somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, humanity fought on, holding back the dark for just a little longer. The evacuation was failing. Medical Officer Nari looked at the reports coming in from across the galaxy and felt her heart sink. Too many people, not enough ships, and not nearly enough time. The Devourers were moving faster now, consuming entire star systems in hours instead of days. We've got refugee ships backed up for 3 sectors, she reported to the emergency council meeting. The jump gates can't handle this much traffic. People are going to be trapped. President Yoonji rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept in 4 days. How many ships do we still need to evacuate? 40,000 vessels carrying approximately 2 billion refugees. At current evacuation rates, we need another 6 months. And how long before the Devourers reach the core worlds? Admiral Doyun asked. Communications specialist Jinwoo answered from his station. Based on their current speed, maybe 2 weeks. 3 if the humans can slow them down more. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Billions of people were going to die because they couldn't move fast enough. What about Kyung-ho's other option? Admiral Doyun asked quietly. President Yoonji looked uncomfortable. The quantum collapse? It's theoretical at best. We don't even know if it would work. But if it did work, then everything dies. Every person, every planet, every star in the galaxy, all of it, gone forever. Dr. Kyung-ho had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. It's not theoretical anymore. I've been working with your quantum engineers. We can do it. We can collapse the dimensional barriers that separate our space from the Devourer's dimension. The resulting explosion would destroy both dimensions completely. And kill everyone in the galaxy, Nari said. Yes, but it would also make sure the Devourers could never leave this galaxy to threaten others. They would be trapped in the collapse with us. Engineer Suman looked up from her calculations. The energy requirements would be enormous. We'd need every ship in the galaxy to overload their power cores simultaneously. And I mean every ship. Military, civilian, cargo haulers, everything. How many ships is that? President Yoonji asked. Based on our last census, about 800,000 vessels of all types scattered across the galaxy. Admiral Do-hyun stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see ships coming and going from the station. Refugees, supply vessels, military patrols. All of them filled with people who just wanted to live. There has to be another way, he said. There isn't, Kyung-ho replied simply. I've spent 50 years thinking about this problem. The Devourers are too powerful, too alien. The only way to stop them is to destroy everything they want to consume. An alarm chimed on Jinwoo's communication board. Sir, I'm getting an emergency transmission from the Outer Rim. It's from the humans. Put it through, Admiral Do-hyun ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was faint and distorted, but recognizable as the same Admiral Chen who had spoken to them before. Allied Command, this is Admiral Hisu Chen, we need to talk. Admiral Chen, this is Admiral Do-hyun. We're receiving you. Admiral, we're losing the war. We've managed to slow the Devourer advance, but we can't stop it. In the past week, we've lost 30% of our remaining forces. The numbers hit the room like a physical blow. If the humans lost 30% of their forces every week, they would be completely gone in less than a month. What do you need from us? Admiral Do-hyun asked. We've detected your evacuation efforts. You won't make it. There isn't enough time. The voice paused. But there is another option. Dr. Park's quantum collapse theory. We've been working on it from our side. We can make it happen. President Yoonji leaned forward. What would you need? Power. Massive amounts of quantum energy focused at specific dimensional coordinates. If every ship in the galaxy overloaded their cores at exactly the same moment, we could use that energy to tear open the barriers between dimensions. And then everything ends. The Devourers, us, you, all of it. But the dimensional collapse would create a dead zone that nothing could cross. The Devourers could never leave this galaxy to threaten Andromeda or any other galaxy. Dr. Kyung-ho stepped forward. Admiral Chen, this is Kyung-ho Park. Would the collapse be instant? Yes, Dr. Park. One moment everything exists, the next moment it doesn't. No pain, no suffering, just ending. The council chamber was completely quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Was it better to die quickly and save other galaxies, or to keep running and hope for a miracle? How long do we have to decide? President Yoonji asked. The Devourers will reach the core worlds in 10 days. After that, there won't be enough civilization left to generate the quantum energy we need. If we're going to do this, it has to be soon. We need time to think about this, Admiral Do-hyun said. I understand. But don't take too long. Every hour we wait is another star system lost. The transmission ended, leaving the council members staring at each other in the sudden silence. We can't ask people to kill themselves, Nari said finally. It's not right. We can't ask them to die slowly either, Sumin replied. Because that's what's going to happen if the Devourers win. Maybe some of the evacuation ships will make it, President Yoonji said hopefully. Kyung-ho shook his head. No, they won't. I've studied the Devourers for decades. They don't stop. They don't get tired. They don't give up. They'll hunt down every ship that tries to escape and erase them all. So our choice is to die now or die later, Admiral Do-hyun said bitterly. Our choice is to die meaninglessly, or die for something, Kyung-ho corrected. If we do the quantum collapse, we save trillions of lives in other galaxies. Our deaths would have meaning. The debate continued for hours. Representatives were called in from refugee ships. Military commanders gave their opinions. Scientists ran more calculations. But in the end, it came down to a simple question. Was it better to hope for a miracle that probably wouldn't come, or to guarantee that evil wouldn't spread beyond their galaxy? As the council argued, reports kept coming in. More star systems consumed, more refugee ships trapped by devourer attacks, more human consciousness vessels destroyed in battles that nobody could see. Time was running out and everyone knew it. Soon they would have to make the hardest decision in galactic history, whether to choose certain death to prevent something even worse. In the space between dimensions, Admiral Hisu Chen and what remained of humanity continued their impossible war. They had given up everything to protect the galaxy 50 years ago. Now they might have to ask the galaxy to give up everything too. The price of victory had always been high, but no one had imagined it might cost everything that had ever lived. The vote was scheduled for noon, but nobody slept the night before. Across the galaxy, representatives from every surviving species debated the impossible choice. Die now to save other galaxies, or keep fighting and probably die anyway. Science Officer Wanho had spent the entire night running calculations in his lab. His eyes were red from staring at screens, but the numbers were clear. The quantum collapse will work, he told his team. If every ship overloads their cores at the same time, we can generate enough energy to tear apart the dimensional barriers. And if some ships don't participate? Asked his assistant. Then we don't have enough power. The collapse fails, and the devourers keep coming. President Yunji stood before the Galactic Council as representatives from 20 species took their seats. Some attended in person, others appeared as holograms from refugee ships scattered across the galaxy. All of them looked tired and afraid. We're here to make the hardest decision in galactic history, Yunji began. Dr. Park and Admiral Chen have presented us with a plan to stop the devourers permanently. But the cost is everything. Every life, every world, every dream we've ever had. Representative Minji from the science colonies spoke first. My people have always believed that knowledge should be preserved above all else. But what good is knowledge if there's no one left to use it? If we can save other galaxies by sacrificing ourselves, perhaps that's the most important thing we could ever do. Easy words, replied Representative Taehyung from the farming worlds. But you're talking about murder, killing billions of innocent people who never asked to be heroes. The devourers will kill them anyway, said Admiral Do-hyun. At least this way their deaths mean something. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for evacuation, even though the numbers showed it was impossible. Others supported the quantum collapse, even though it meant certain death for everyone. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the devourers, though nobody had any idea how to communicate with beings that erased the very concept of existence. Dr. Kyung-ho listened to the arguments, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the moment 50 years ago when humanity had made their choice. They hadn't had a council meeting or a vote. When the devourers appeared, humans had simply done what needed to be done. May I speak? He asked during a break in the debate. President Yunji nodded. The floor recognizes Dr. Park. Kyung-ho stood up slowly. He looked older than his years, worn down by the weight of being the last normal human in the galaxy. 50 years ago, my species faced this same choice. We could run, we could hide, or we could fight. We chose to fight, even though it meant giving up everything that made us human. He walked to the center of the council chamber. I was supposed to go with them. I was supposed to transform like all the others. But someone had to stay behind to warn you when the devourers broke free. So I went into cryogenic sleep while my entire species became something else. For 50 years, humans have been fighting in dimensions you can't see, dying in ways you can't understand, all to give you time to escape. But there is no escape. The devourers will follow you to Andromeda, to every galaxy in the universe until nothing exists anywhere. This is our chance to stop them, not just slow them down, not just make them angry, but stop them forever. Yes, it costs everything, but everything is already lost if we don't act. Representative Seung-min from the Merchant Guild stood up. Dr. Park, you're asking us to choose genocide, to murder every child, every innocent person in the galaxy. No, Kyung-ho replied. I'm asking you to choose sacrifice. There's a difference. Murder is about taking life for selfish reasons. Sacrifice is about giving life for something greater than yourself. And what if you're wrong? What if there's another way? Then we'll never know. Because the devourers will be here in 6 days, and by then it won't matter what other options might have existed. The alarm system suddenly activated across the station. Emergency lights flashed as officers ran to their positions. Communications Officer Jinwoo's voice echoed through the council chamber. All ships, this is Central Command. We have multiple devourer signatures approaching the core worlds. Estimated arrival time, 72 hours. Repeat, the devourers will reach the core worlds in 3 days. The council chamber fell silent. The timeline had just moved up. Instead of 6 days to decide, they had 3. How many ships? Admiral Do-hyun called out. Hundreds, sir. Maybe thousands. More than we've ever seen before. President Yunji looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the galaxy's leaders. The situation has changed. We need to vote now. Wait, said Representative Yuna from the outer colonies. What about the people who aren't here? The civilians on refugee ships? Don't they get a say in whether they live or die? There's no time, Admiral Do-hyun replied. We need to act now or lose the chance forever. Commander Taehyung had been quiet during most of the debate, but now he stood up. He commanded the largest remaining fleet in the galaxy, over 3,000 ships carrying both military personnel and refugees. I've been listening to this debate all day, he said, and I keep thinking about something Dr. Park said. The difference between murder and sacrifice is intent. If we do nothing, billions die for no reason. If we act, billions die to save trillions. He activated his personal communicator. All ships of the Second Fleet, this is Commander Taehyung. I'm about to make a decision that will affect all of you. I'm going to start broadcasting the quantum overload sequence. Any ship that wants to participate can follow the protocol. Any ship that doesn't want to participate can try to escape to other galaxies. Commander, you can't make that choice for everyone. President Yoonji protested. Someone has to, Taehyung replied. And I'd rather make the hard choice than let fear make it for me. His broadcast went out across the galaxy. The quantum overload sequence, a series of commands that would cause a ship's power core to build up energy until it exploded, was now available to every vessel in space. What happened next surprised everyone. Ships began responding immediately. Not just military vessels, but civilian transports, cargo haulers, passenger liners. Captains made the choice for their crews and passengers. Some chose to try the overload sequence. Others chose to run for the edge of the galaxy. How many ships are participating? Admiral Doyun asked. Jinwoo checked his readouts. About 60% so far, sir. More are deciding every minute. President Yoonji watched the tactical display as ships across the galaxy made their choices. Green dots represented ships that had accepted the overload sequence. Red dots represented ships that were fleeing. The green dots outnumbered the red ones by a significant margin. The people are choosing for themselves, she said quietly. Because they understand what the stakes are, Kyung-ho replied. They know that running away just delays the inevitable. In the space between dimensions, Admiral Hisu Chen felt the quantum energy building across the galaxy. The human consciousness ships were preparing for their own final assault on the Devourer strongholds. 50 years of war would end in the next few days, one way or another. All human units, she broadcast to her forces, prepare for the final engagement. We're going to hit the Devourers with everything we have left. Our sacrifice, combined with the Allied quantum overload, should be enough to create the dimensional collapse. And if it's not enough, asked one of her officers, then at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have fought until the very end. The countdown had begun. In 3 days, when the Devourers reached the core worlds, every ship in the galaxy would face the same choice that humanity had made 50 years earlier. Sacrifice everything to protect others, or watch as evil consumed the universe. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, there would be no survivors to tell the story.